the latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. Kiernan Shipka is the latest Hollywood star to appear at a scripted podcast. She'll star in Treat, being produced by Audity's C13 Features, in the first feature-length project from the company, touted as Movies for Your Ears. Ivo Terra has published his podcast app manifesto, 4 things he'd like to see in any podcast app. He spoke about them this week in Podland, where he was a guest. You'll find the Podland podcast wherever you get this podcast, probably. Podcasting is an ideal tool to inject false or misleading information into mainstream discourse while going undetected. That's according to research from Valerie Verschafter at the Brookings Institution. 10% of all podcasts contain misinformation, she says, adding that RSS feeds are a significant hurdle for content moderation. She says that addressing the moderation of misleading material requires a fundamental rethinking of the broader podcast infrastructure. AudioShip is a new product that claims it's the easiest way to upload your audio to YouTube. Audio Drama Day will return to the London Podcast Festival on September the 5th. Dirk Maggs will close the festival in a special live interview with audio drama expert Ella Watts. Cuban podcast platform Cubapod is to close due to lack of funding and faster than expected growth. My recommendation for other entrepreneurs, said co-founder and CEO Carlos Lagunes, is don't start a project without a business model. One of China's biggest audio platforms, Dragonfly FM, has been ordered to be removed from app stores by the Chinese government for using too many pop-up notifications and for asking for excessive device permissions. We like the sound of the Chinese government. Marie Joyce has joined Australian women's media brand Mamma Mia as head of audio sales in Victoria. Apple has announced changes coming to the App Store with clarification on non-app payment methods, which may be relevant for third-party podcast subscription services and apps. And good luck to those nominated in the Columbus Podcast Awards, which take place this weekend. And in podcast news, Pantheon Podcasts focuses on the real Patch Adams in a podcast that aims to reclaim inspiration, love, and hope for humanity. We could do that this week. The Best Day of My Life is a 10-part series weaving stories from Patch, his family, friends, and colleagues. How's the liquidity of your Lightning node? Decoding Crypto is a new podcast to help understand what cryptocurrency is all about. It's hosted by Justin Baldori and Jason Pizzino. It launches today from Nova Entertainment Podcast Network. And we've seen a story in CNBC. This entrepreneur is set to make $1.2 million from his podcast this year. Here's how he's doing it. It features Stephen Bartlett, the host of The Diary of a CEO, and it's quite simple. He earns $1.2 million from 3 sponsors, which he sells himself. He spent $55,000 on equipment, and he employs 8 people to work on the podcast. So that's okay then. Minute of Podcast Zen coming up next, but that's the latest from our newsletter. For all the links, we're at podnews.net.
For Pod News, I'm Ivo Terra with your Minute of Pod Zen. A lot of podcast marketing advice starts and ends with this: build a funnel and keep feeding people into it. And while that can and does work for some, it'll frustrate a lot of podcasters. The core concept of a podcast marketing funnel is making lots of people aware of your podcast, then getting some of them to consider listening to your podcast, and then getting an even smaller set to actually listen. Seems simple, right? Perhaps too simple. I have a few issues with that simplicity. To start, I think the metaphor of a funnel is all wrong. A real funnel's job is to, funnel everything through it and not spill a drop. But every marketer knows that marketing funnels are leaky and only help the right people progress through the process. Also, actual funnels have a single entry point, the top. There's no side hatch on my kitchen funnel. But in reality, people are quite likely to first encounter your podcast at any stage of the funnel, not just the top. And then there's the problem of gravity. Every marketing funnel assumes linear top-to-bottom refinement and progression from awareness to consideration to conversion. That's nice and neat, but not at all accurate of the chaotic, messy, and unpredictable way individuals interact with content. You'll find more thoughts on this topic and other questions every working podcaster should be asking themselves at podcastpontifications.com. I'm Ivo Terra. This has been your Minute of Pod Zen.